Your reaction to the Prime Minister's roadmap announcement today?
Well, on a personal level, I'm quite relieved to hear that there may be some light at the end of the tunnel, not least because I have a 5-year-old at home who I'm currently trying to teach phonics to. So, like a lot of families, we've been looking for announcements. But I think more importantly, what was helpful today is that for now, at least, the Prime Minister has resisted strong pressure from his own backbenches and appears to be following the science. As Keir Starmer said earlier, this has got to be the last lockdown. We can't have any more of this. And in order to make sure it is, we've got to come out of this cautiously and in a way that is consistent with the science.
And wonderful that your leader, Keir Starmer, has backed the Prime Minister's decision to get all pupils back, including your 5-year-old, both primary and secondary, on March the 8th. That's blessed news for most families.
I think it's good news, but obviously we need a plan to make sure that that happens safely, and every parent around the country will be thinking about that today. And we need a plan as well to make sure that when children are back in schools, that they can catch up on the many, many hours that they've lost over the last year. There are parts of the country like mine where infection rates have consistently been high for almost a year now, and children, especially GCSE age children, have lost a lot of schooling. So we need a proper plan from the government. We need to be talking to schools and teachers now. About 20 minutes ago, I had a text message from a deputy head teacher in my constituency asking me if it was true that schools were going back, and if so, was there going to be any discussion with schools about the measures that they need to put in place in order to do it. Now, 2 weeks before the day that schools return, that really isn't good enough. We're not learning the lessons here, and the Education Secretary needs to re-emerge and start to set out some of those plans in the next couple of days.
Do you think that schools have been closed for too much of this pandemic, Lisa?
Well, most schools, of course, have remained open. And one of the difficulties that teachers have had in the last few weeks is that they are simultaneously teaching children of key workers in schools and teaching other children online. And that has been an enormous challenge for our teachers. They're absolutely on their knees. They've got 2 weeks now in which they're going to have to get reopened, mass testing up and running. We certainly saw an announcement from the Prime Minister today that secondary school pupils are going to be tested in school on a regular basis, twice weekly. So that is a lot to expect schools to do. And that's why, instead of this very confrontational approach that the government has taken up until now, attacking the teaching unions and threatening to take schools to court who are saying that they can't comply with some of these instructions, we need to see a much more comprehensive approach from the government that reaches out and works with those teachers and with those schools to make sure that we can get all those kids back into the classroom. It has been a long time, and I don't think anybody wants this to continue.
Indeed not. I noticed that sly dig at the Tory backbenchers, the so-called COVID recovery group of lockdown sceptic MPs. I wonder, though, Lisa, whether, notwithstanding the debate around the science of lockdown, their effectiveness or otherwise, those MPs are not sort of swivel-eyed lunatics. They're people that are just receiving emails day in, day out from constituents who are devastated by these COVID restrictions.
I think so. The area that the Prime Minister mentioned today that's often been overlooked is gyms and the impact of gym closures on people, particularly in terms of people's mental health, older people and people with disabilities as well. It's very difficult for a lot of people who have disabilities to go and exercise outside, especially when you're only allowed out for a short amount of time a day. So it's been a really, really difficult thing, this, and my heart absolutely goes out to all of those people, as well as the businesses that are closed, the parents whose children are out of school. For all of those reasons, we've got to get ourselves out of this lockdown, but that means that we have to do it in a way that is cautious and consistent with the science. And where I really disagree with those 60 Tory backbenchers who've been calling to an end to all restrictions is that the Prime Minister's bowed to their pressure on 2 occasions before, in autumn when he wouldn't have a circuit breaker quickly enough to break the cycle of transmissions that was rising, and at Christmas as well, which is now widely regarded across the political spectrum as a decision that was a mistake. We can't afford to keep making these mistakes, and that's why he was right to resist that pressure today. I hope he's strong enough to continue to do so.
That said, so many of my listeners who are Labour voters, Lisa, don't feel heard by this current Labour leadership in terms of the damage to their lives of the COVID measures and of lockdown. And they just feel that the mood music has been to back the government four square in every single lockdown. And they just don't feel heard by Labour.
Well, I guess I would say to those people that the fastest way that we get out of this recurring cycle of lockdowns is to come out of this at the right moment and let what happened in the north of England be a cautionary tale. The government lifted lockdown restrictions last summer at a moment when infection rates in London were falling, but were rising in other parts of the country. And as a result, we've lived with lockdown in parts of the country like mine for almost a year continuously, which is why we've been fighting so hard for the financial support for our businesses, because many of them just simply won't survive it. We've got to get this right. We've got to listen to our scientific advisors. And finally, it feels like the government might be doing that. We've just got to resist the pressure to open up too quickly and see us go into another cycle of this at the end of the summer.
Final thought, Lisa. I was hugely enthusiastic about your candidacy for the Labour leadership election. Keir Starmer is a very, very decent man, a clever man as well. But at the moment, Labour are trailing in the polls during a pandemic when supposedly the Tories have handled things terribly. If you were in post as Labour leader, you'd be streets ahead now, wouldn't you?
Well, it's very kind of you to offer your support. I can't tell you how many people offered their support after ballots had closed. A few more of you at the time might have done the job.
Well, you had lots of ideas, and I think you won a lot of plaudits for your leadership election campaign.
But look, what I would say to you is this, that throughout the leadership contest, actually, what we were determined as a team to show, Keir, Becky and I, is that we had a lot of ideas in the Labour Party, that unity does not mean uniformity, that you can have that debate, that you can challenge ourselves and the country to be a better place to grow up in, a better place to grow old in. And together we can get that right. And that's why I'm very proud to be part of Keir Starmer's team, because I think it's a real mark of the man that he assembled the strongest team of people who have different ideas, who have a lot to say, in order that we can get this right together. And last week, when he set out how this has got to be the moment when we change course as a country and we start to raise our ambition for the people of this country, I was very proud to stand alongside him as his shadow foreign secretary.
Lisa, we wish your 5-year-old a happy return to the classroom on March the 8th. And thank you very much for your time. Lisa Nandy is Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary. Your reaction, my number is 0344 499 1000. An important moment, I think, for Labour that Keir Starmer backed the reopening of schools to all pupils on March the 8th. He has stood up to the unions. Is that the right thing to do? Marvin is in Hull. Hello, Marvin.
Mark, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Marvin. Now, tell me about your thoughts, your emotions today. I was calling it Super Monday, but I think it's a bit more like Blue Monday right now.
I know, and it's great to see that I'm a student. I'm also in the nightlife industry, and it's a bit of relief for ourselves. It's great to see that the government, fair play, they've done a fantastic job of the vaccine programme so far. And if we keep on this trajectory and keep expanding capacity, there's no reason why we shouldn't be lifting the restrictions by the date they've given. I'd like it to be earlier. However, I do appreciate we've been in a few lockdowns so far. I think this is a final push, and if there's any further delays, I think we're really going to see a lot of issues throughout the country, more uprising against it. But, the figures have just come in today, 17.5 million people vaccinated, and if we keep expanding that capacity, we're well on the course to make sure that we've got all restrictions lifted by, I think it's the 21st of June.
Well, indeed. Now, Marvin, am I right in understanding that you begin your academic career at university in October of this year?
I'm actually finishing my university this year, so I'm a third-year university student. Mainly in the nightlife, it's just good to see from the government today they've attempted to address all sectors. I know there's technicalities in, can we see this, can we do that, but we have to give them credit where credit's due on the vaccination programme, and it's only going to expand. We've hit the targets we needed to hit, and I think they've reduced the amount of time for all adults to be vaccinated or being offered a vaccination by the 31st of July. I mean, we're trying to get people vaccinated, bring the virus to a level where, the vulnerable aren't going to be hospitalised. And in the short time they've had the vaccine programme rolled out, those that are less vulnerable are offered it in a more meaningful time frame. There's just no reason why we should be keeping the restrictions past the 21st of June.
Well, indeed,
So,
if
you
not
know, I am
sooner, if
pleased,
not
but
sooner. I mean, I suppose the important point that you're raising, Marvin, is that the timeline may be a little pessimistic for many, but at least we've got those dates to hang on to now. And who knows, whisper it, Martin, if we get the vaccine rollout right and the vaccine performs as hoped, it could be that the restrictions will be lifted ahead of time.
definitely, I just want to say one final thing. I think what this pandemic has shown is we might have a pandemic in the future. Obviously, we do need to do an investigation in this one. I don't think it's a bad thing. You know, we can see where we need to grow. We can see what needs to be changed. But I'd just like to mention that we can just see now the importance of key workers and the importance of community and family that this pandemic's shown. So let's crack on and look forward to the 12th of the 21st.
Marvin, a wonderful breath of fresh air, and absolutely to our key workers, including DJs, of which you are one.